That's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
Welcome back to the Bottom Line Cast, the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is episode 2, the Vega Saga, February through May of 1996. I'm Mike Prue, along with JV. JV, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, sitting here on a nice little glass of scotch on the rocks, ready to talk some wrestling.
There you go. I got some little Captain Morgan going in my glass, too.
Nice.
So, we're ready to go. Last week, great episode, our debut episode. Things are going well. Based on the stats that I'm looking at, I'm getting some feedback. We even went international. We're in Canada. Not that international, but hey, Canada's freaking international. So, there we go. People found us somehow in Canada. In, what was it, Ontario, Vancouver. Hey, thank you guys for listening. Hope you're still listening. That's the thing with the first episode of a podcast, though, is that people listen, and shit, they might not listen again. So, hopefully, they'll listen to this number 2. Because they'll be listening, and then it's like, oh, I don't know if they're going to have another episode. Well, here's the second episode. It's here. We kept going. So, stick with us. Like I said last week, we are on like a 59, 60 episode journey through Stone Cold's career. We're not stopping after 1 week. We're not stopping with the Ringmaster. Okay? So, last week we had, according to a few people that give us some feedback, little audio issue. Hopefully we fixed it up. And I think it was just on like iTunes or iOS devices that the audio was not very loud. So if you're in your car, you may have jacked the volume up big time in order to hear the podcast. So I think we got that all straightened out. JV was working on that. JV's also like our production man here. He's the man behind.
I think I've figured it out. I think everything's going to be a lot louder the rest of the way. So across all platforms.
As long as we scream too, it can be louder. All right, so I just want to thank all the people that listened last week. All the people that have subscribed so far. You know, it's not easy to start a podcast and get it going. So you guys that have listened and are listening now, thank you very much. And don't try to keep this like your own little thing where it's like, oh, I get this Stone Cold podcast that I listen to. Tell your friends about it. Okay? Don't like keep it like some indie thing where it's like, oh, I'm cool because I listen to this. We want other people to hear it. So spread the word. Get those listeners. Help us out because you know, we're putting work in. We want other people to hear it, not just you. But thank you for listening, though. All right, so this week we're on to, like I said last week, we got the Rogues Gallery of shitty characters from Batman coming up, and we're starting off with the Savio Vega episode. Okay, and no disrespect to Savio Vega, because believe me, by the end of this episode, you're gonna be, oh shit, Savio Vega's damn good, and he is. He's not somebody that stands out as being this big superstar or future opponents that Steve Austin has, like The Rock. You know, so we're going through the early phase right now, and Savio Vega is one of those guys that took up a good amount of time in his early months. So we're covering February to May. Last week I had said that the episodes were usually going to be about a month period long, but being that Savio Vega was his opponent for 2 major pay-per-views in a row, we decided to spare people from 2 back-to-back weeks, and spare ourselves, too, of 2 back-to-back weeks of Savio Vega episodes.
2 hours of Savio Vega.
So we decided to just make it 1 episode, the Vega Saga, February through May, which is going to cover his time leading up to Wrestlemania 12, and then also In Your House, Beware of Dog. Can't even say dog. That's my New England accent. Dog. Beware of Dog Part 1 and Part 2. And if you don't know what that's all about, I'll explain that when time comes up for it. All right, so on our agenda today, that's there. But we're also going to talk about how the Ringmaster gradually becomes Stone Cold Steve Austin. And JV, was there anything from last week that you wanted to bring up about stunning to Ringmaster? Or
no.
You're all good. No?
Nothing that came to mind.
All right, so last week we talked about Steve Austin's rise, you know, through the ranks from USWA, working through WCW, and then his little brief stint in ECW, then finally making it to WWF. Not making it. I hate to say it like that because it sounds presumptuous. As I said last week, we are from WWF area, so it may seem like we're rooting for them. Like, oh, they made it. They're in WWF. But he finally came to WWF as the ringmaster. We talked about Royal Rumble and the little mishap he had in the Royal Rumble. And that was the basic premise of that episode. Now we're moving on, and he's starting to get his first feud. And that first feud is with Savio Vega. I do want to also give a shout out to a listener and friend of our former podcast that we had, the Hurricane Run Wrestling podcast, Frank Alves. Last week, when we talked about the Matt Hardy match, I had said that Matt Hardy had some hideous tights that said HV on the back. And I failed to realize what it was. I said that he probably used that name on the Indies, something with HV on the Indies, but I didn't look it up, which I should have. My fault. And he sent me a message saying, oh, he used to go by High Voltage. Have you ever heard of that, JV? High Voltage?
No.
Have you ever heard of High Voltage, the tag team?
The tag team, yes, but not as Matt Hardy High Voltage. I don't know what that stood for.
Yeah, so thanks Frank for pointing that out to us.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, getting into our main part of the show now is the ringmaster is going to develop the Stone Cold persona. And if you're watching the shows, if you're prepping for the episodes like we do, you're going to see over the month of February and March that gradually the commentators, Vince McMahon most notably, is referring to him as Stone Cold. He's talking about the ringmaster is very Stone Cold. He's a very calculating man. So they're starting to build up that persona gradually over time. But it starts with Austin being kind of pissed off about the ringmaster gimmick itself. That, hey, this is like a shit idea. I'm wearing my old boots from WCW. I got green trunks on. I got the $1 Million Man with me. I can speak better than him probably to cut a promo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Can.
Yeah. And I'm wearing this $1 Million belt. Like, what the hell is this even for? This belt hasn't been relevant since 1991 when Virgil was fighting for it, and we're talking about Virgil. So
he said relevant.
Yeah, it was actually relevant. So, like, what the hell's going on? He wants to do something. If he's going to be a big star, then he needs to take control of his own career. So he talks to Briscoe and Patterson, Pat Patterson, Jerry Briscoe, which kind of like Vince McMahon's right-hand guys at the time. And you may remember them as the Stooges, but they were viable people backstage that had control over storylines. So he talked to them about his gimmick, and he thought it was shit, basically. And then Vince went back to Briscoe and Patterson and said, oh, tell Austin to come up with something then. If he doesn't like it, give us an idea. So, what ends up happening is he's sitting back in his house one day, and he's having a few drinks, according to his documentary, having a few drinks, and he's watching a real-life drama crime story about this serial killer hitman, Richard Kuklinski, who's known as the Iceman. He worked for a New York mob, and he thought that guy was just, very evil, and was thinking that maybe I could have a character like that where I'm just, very tough, not giving a shit about anybody. So he pitches that idea to the WWF creative team. They're like, all right. And then they send him a bunch of names back of what he could be. And he has names like Otto Von Ruthless, Ice Dagger, Fang McFrost.
Fang McFrost, the first time I saw that, I'm like, you know what? I bet you that would work for someone like Finn Balor. Like, that's something they'd throw on him if they just get desperate with him. Fang McFrost or something,
You can make any name sound good. Yeah. Fang McFrost. Ice Dagger.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Regardless, they all sound like
American
shit.
Gladiator names.
But freaking Otto von Ruthless? Was he German now? So, Steve Austin was thinking, like I said last week when he was trying to come up with a name before Dutch Mantel said, your fucking name's Steve Austin. Get out in the ring. That's what it is. So, point being, the name can ruin a superstar. And he knew that all the way back then, and he knew it again right here. That, man, if I have one of these names, it's going to ruin my career.
Ice Dagger.
Ice Dagger. So, his gimmick is coming from the idea of this Iceman, Richard Kuklinski. And there's also a really good movie. I don't know if you watched it, JV. It's called The Iceman. It has Michael Shannon. You know Michael Shannon?
Yeah, of course. Zod from Man of Steel.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So there was a movie in 2012 where he played Richard Kuklinski. It was freaking awesome.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah. So check that movie out.
Yeah.
So anyways, he's having a hard time about the name again. Damn, I got to come up with a name. So, in comes Lady Blossom again. I wish she would come in more, but this is probably the last story with Lady Blossom. And she's the wife of Steve Austin at the time. And he's like, damn, I need to come up with a name. And she's telling him, hey, don't worry about it. You're going to come up with something. Just make sure you drink your tea before it gets stone cold. He said, that's it. That's your name. Stone Cold. Stone Cold Steve Austin. So right there, a name pops out. Stone Cold. His wife is British. So for those thinking, who the hell says Stone Cold? Drink it before it gets stone cold. Well, that's a common phrase in British English. And she said that to her husband. And that became the name that we now know and love. So other things that led to his character was the shaved head. JV, do you know where the shaved head comes from?
Pulp Fiction and Natural Born Killers. Specifically, Natural Born Killers.
Alright, so, yeah. Natural Born Killers. You have Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson has shaved head. I think Steve Austin apparently liked that movie, and he liked Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, he had Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis had a shaved head. So he thought, those guys look badass with shaved heads. So he said, well, I barely got an inch of hair on my head. Fucking just shave this shit off.
I'm going to be Woody Harrelson.
I'll be the bartender and cheers. Fuck it.
See, that's where he got the beer from. He basically ripped off Woody Harrelson for his whole gimmick.
That was just like last week we were talking about he was ripping off the Sandman.
Yeah, it's actually Woody Harrelson. Go figure. White man can't jump.
So he shaves his head, and he gets this kind of new persona. He's still the ringmaster at this point, and he just looks different. He's got this shaved head, this cold demeanor, and that's when Vince McMahon on commentary starts to tell everybody that, oh, he's cold and calculating. He's stone cold. So it's almost like they're transitioning. Like, all right, we had him as the ringmaster, but we can't just make him stone cold. So I need to talk for about a month about how he's cold and calculating. And then, like, yeah, he's the ringmaster, but people backstage, his opponents, call him stone cold.
Yes, he says, yeah.
So he becomes Stone Cold Steve Austin. And even in that Royal Rumble match, they called him Steve Austin as the ringmaster. So they were just moving on right away. He was probably, like I said earlier, he was pissed off about it and giving some heat about it.
Well, he got the Vince McMahon in one of the episodes he's commentating, and he's like, they call him the ringmaster because, that's what his peers call him in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep.
That's terrible.
So he ends up cutting some promos. If you remember back, or those of you that didn't watch back in 1996, on Superstars and even on Raw, they used to have segments where they would cut during a match and show an interview, pre-recorded interview of a wrestler that was on their way to the ring, and they'd be talking about their match coming up and whatever, kind of like basic promo. So Steve Austin would do a bunch of those, and so many of them would get cut or edited And Steve Austin was getting pissed about it because he thought he was cutting some damn good promos to try to put himself over. But the thing that was happening was he was making everybody laugh. He was making all the production people laugh. And Austin was like, no, he's supposed to be stone cold. He's supposed to be mean and tough. You can't have people liking this. So all the good shit that he was putting out, Vince McMahon saying, we can't have that because he's supposed to be a heel. You can't like what he's saying. So what he ends up doing eventually is just that. He gets people to like him because of the promos he cuts. Mm-hmm. And even though he's a heel, he gets liked because of the way he's doing it. And originally, that was the way that he was cutting his promos. But Vince McMahon was putting a stop to that. So Austin was kind of pissed about it. He was like, hey, let me cut the damn promos that I want to cut. And he went up to Vince McMahon and said that. So this is just a personal view that I have, is that when you have a boss in your work, whatever you do, you need to build a relationship with your superior. You need to stick up for what you believe in. Tell your boss what you feel, what you think is right. Build a positive relationship. They respect that. And you'll be able to do, most likely, what you want oftentimes, as long as you build that relationship. And that's what Austin did. And we know that Vince and Austin ended up working together for a long time after that. You gotta stand up to your boss, not in a defensive way.
Yeah.
But you just gotta build a relationship and say, no, this is what I want to do, and this is my view, and this right. This is my view. This is what I believe is right, and they'll generally buy into that.
Yep.
So Steve Austin did that because at that point, based on the promo we listened to last week from ECW, he had no fucks left to give.
Oh.
Really. So he was like, "Nah, if it's not gonna work here, fuck it."
He was putting his chips all in.
Oh yeah, and it worked.
To do things his way is, and he kind of ended up getting his way in every way.
Yeah.
Until the
end. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Long story.
Yeah.
All right, so that's how he gradually becomes stone cold. He's not exactly stone cold yet. I don't know if you guys really even want to hear this, but there's a rundown of matches that he had. He only has 3 more matches as the ringmaster at this point. So he has a match against Fatu right after the Royal Rumble. Guess what we're picking up from last week? It was the Royal Rumble. And then he was thrown out by Fatu accidentally. And he has a match on Superstars against Fatu, defeats Fatu. Then as the ringmaster, he goes against Marty Jannetty on Raw, February. And then a match against, some guy named Tony. so he has 3 matches as the ringmaster. And then getting into March, he finally becomes Stone Cold in a match versus Aldo Montoya. But we'll get to that later in a few minutes. But what we want to talk about now is our main character for today, Savio Vega.
Caribbean sensation.
The Caribbean sensation. But before that, he was the martial arts expert. Quang. So we're going to do just a little brief profile of who Savio Vega is. It's Juan Rivera. He started in WWF in 1994 as Quang, wore a mask. JV, take it away.
Oh,
what do you got to say about Quang?
He also had his mist, his Asian mist, which is pretty crazy. So Prue and I, we did a little bit of background on Asian mist, and apparently there's different colors, and each color has a different effect on their opponent. They're like, kind of like if anyone watches Avengers and stuff, like they're like Infinity Stones, but it's Asian mist. So we're gonna go through them quick here. We got green, which is commonly used mist, which is said to obstruct the opponent's vision. Then there's red, which burns the eyes. There's black. Now this one's great. It's said to blind the opponent for several weeks, and apparently Tahiri used this on Nydia at some point.
Tajiri.
Tajiri, yeah. Blue, sends the opponent to sleep. Yellow, paralyzes the opponent. And purple, causes momentarily distraction and memory loss.
I don't think I've seen any of those play out the way
No.
that says. All I remember is every time this is missed, the person just covers their eyes and they get swept in the legs and get pinned. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no interview like, oh, I was paralyzed. Oh, I was blind for a period of time.
They would never commit to the opponent being blind for several weeks. So as we were saying, does the goo, I don't even know what you call it, the voodoo from
Voodoo
Papa Shango that affected
yeah.
the
Ultimate Warrior.
That was black. So does that fall under the same category as Asian Mist?
Yeah, what the hell was that? Well, it's not coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, it was like
just pouring out of his hair.
Voodoo
juju.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something different, I guess. Anyways, Quang did that.
Quang did all that.
And then to find out he was just Puerto Rican. He wasn't some Asian martial arts expert.
Even though he did all his martial arts moves on his entrance and everything, he wore 2 masks. He wore a mask over a mask, which was that's pretty crazy.
And he had Harvey Wimpleman.
Yeah, Harvey Wimpleman. That's right. Yeah,
Harvey Wimpleman. Yeah. Yeah, that was a whole great thing going all around there. You had Quang and Harvey Wimpleman together. You got the green mist and the red mist.
Screaming. Wouldn't let Quang pin people. Like, no, get up and beat his face in some more. That's good stuff.
So eventually, they get rid of Quang, but Juan Rivera stays on the payroll, and he gets a new gimmick. He becomes Savio Vega. This is in May 1995. And he appears at the first In Your House. And he comes out of the audience. And he's one of Razor Ramon's boys. Because Razor is from Cuba. And Savio Vega's from Puerto Rico. So they're boys. Savio Vega's going to help Razor Ramon out. So that goes on for a while. And that's the current run where he ends up having this feud with Steve Austin. But later, as time goes on, he becomes a member of the Nation of Domination. And then the leader of a rival faction, Los Boricuas. Hey, what do you remember about them? Do you remember those guys? Los Boricuas? I don't remember anybody that's in it. I just remember the name.
Yeah, I remember
the Vega. Name. I know he was a little bit more badass.
But wasn't it like very gang-centric?
Yeah, the whole thing was. There was like a few gangs out at that time. You had the Nation of Domination, Los Boricuas. You had it was like the biker gang. It was a Crush.
Yeah.
Brian Lee was in it.
Were there headbangers in that or no?
Not headbangers, but the 2 bald guys. They were Eli and Jacob Blue, the Blue Brothers before the Bruise Brothers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Remember those guys?
Yes.
Yeah, so they had a bunch of different gangs going on at that point. I think that was like 98 that was going on. So then one of the last things that Savio Vega appears in is the Brawl for All, which was the WWF's attempt to have real fighting.
Oh, man.
Real boxing. So, in the Brawl for All, Savio defeats Brackus. And then he gets defeated by Draws.
Is that the same Brackus that was in the Best of the Best 2 movie? Because I always thought they were the same as a kid. The villain from Best of the Best 2 was Brackus.
Oh, I don't know.
His name was Brackus in the movie. I'm pretty sure they were the same guy. I could look it up, but...
Yeah. Screw it. Yeah. Somebody else can look it up and tell us.
Yeah. Tell us in.
Yeah. So that's his last appearance, too. He gets knocked out by Draws, and then he doesn't again in WWF, and that was in 2000, August 10th, 2000. So Savio Vega, steady hand, apparently. He worked 6 years in WWF, different types of roles. And he doesn't stand out as being a big star, obviously, but like I said, by the end of this episode, you'll be like, wow, he could wrestle. He has some good matches. Mm-hmm. All right, so one of the first matches we want to talk about, and this is a Savio Vega heavy. Obviously, it's called the Vega Saga. So we got a lot of Savio Vega for you today. We have his first match with Stone Cold is on Raw. This is episode 150 from March 11th, 1996. So it's Steve Austin versus Savio Vega, and the timestamp for Raw 150 is 1 minute in. So basically, you don't even need a timestamp. Just put on the episode. It's the first match.
Hit play.
It lasts about 9 minutes. So this is where you have the beginning of that transition of the ringmaster to Stone Cold. Right away at the beginning, Vince McMahon says, "The ringmaster is Stone Cold for sure." So, as I said earlier, just planting the seed, like, okay, we're changing his name, but we want the audience to get used to it. We can't just say he's Stone Cold now. I have to lay it into the audience week after week. He's Stone Cold. He's cold and calculating. So it makes sense when time comes. All right, so he's labeled as, but the other thing that's funny is he says the ringmaster is Stone Cold for sure. And then in the graphic, it says Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yep, I noticed that too.
And then you're like,
I didn't know if that was added in or was that like, because I was watching on the network. I don't know. I'm gonna assume that wasn't added in, and they're just trying to like.
Well, it's probably added in
like
because
like more current, like younger viewers, or if that
No,
was
I don't
actually
think it's-
what was posted when the show aired.
no, I think that's what's aired originally.
All right.
It's just that the show was taped. It's a tape show. So it may have been taped a week before, and they already knew they were going to go with Stone Cold.
So they used that graphic.
So they just,
That's what I thought, because it's an old looking graphic. It looks like it's from the 90s. It doesn't look like.
Yeah.
You know.
And the audio was probably recorded earlier, where he was saying, "Oh, the ringmaster is Stone Cold for sure."
Right. Yep.
And they just decided to put his name is Stone Cold. So that's the first time we see Stone Cold Steve Austin on TV is March 11th, 1996 on Raw 150. Then it shows a little recap of his match with Aldo Montoya. It's not really much great going on with this match. JV, you watch this match?
No, I didn't catch
recently?
the Aldo Montoya one.
No, not the Aldo Montoya.
The Raw
I'm
match?
talking about Raw.
Oh yeah,
Savio Vega.
I enjoyed it.
You like the Raw match?
Well, I liked the beginning because it was hard hitting, but then it just got very redundant. They weren't really like reaching for any crazy spots or anything, which I guess we're kind of spoiled because that's how a lot more matches are currently. So that's the other thing. When I'm watching these old matches, I'm trying to compare them to what we watch now, and everything's just a little bit different. So for the time, was it good? Yeah, I mean, it was okay to start, but then, you know, obviously the ending is a little whack, but it sets up what ends up being a few matches feud. So
yeah, so nothing really great here. There's a couple things I like to point out about this match is that there was a fan in the front row. This is just my own little personal thing because I collect wrestling figures, and this guy put up an old Hasbro figure in the box, but it was a Ringmaster. And that never existed. That's not a real thing, so it must have been like a fan-created thing. This is San Antonio, Texas, so I'm wondering what the hell's up with that toy, because I want it. So, is that a real thing? Is that still out there? No, there's this. It stands out to me.
Zach Ryder might have it. Apparently, Zach Ryder's a big, very
well, I'm gonna tweet at him and see if he knows about that.
He might have it.
Or I'll even reference this episode and say, "Take a look at that. Where is that?"
He's the guy to ask. Apparently, he's one of the. He's come to be one of the bigger collectors in that. That clique.
Another thing that stood out with this match, and this is not even related to the wrestling, you got Jerry Lawler on commentary, and he's just like the typical dad joke guy.
Yeah.
So one line that stood out to me was, "Oh, he's so clumsy he tripped over a cordless phone."
What was the one you said before? It wasn't in the match. That was a good one.
Oh, so because of that, I was like, I gotta look up some other ones. So here's some other Jerry Lawler dad jokes. The other day I saw Stu Hart. I told him start acting his age, so he died.
It's ruthless.
The other one that you like, that you were just talking about, you can look into Sable's eyes and see the back of her head. Yeah, a lot of his jokes were towards the Hart family. oftentimes. So here's another one. This will be the biggest war since David versus Goliath, which I understand Stu and Helen Hart still have their ticket stubs, dude.
Jesus.
Mae Young's day job was being a waitress at the Last Supper. Fucking classic shit that he has. Jerry Lawler. Dad jokes. I wish I was that funny, though. I'm a dad. I'm not that funny. So anyways, the match is solid overall. It's not a bad match. Another thing of note is that Mark Henry is there. This is like really the debut of Mark Henry. He's sitting ringside. He had a body slam Jerry Lawler earlier in the night. And one thing about Ted DiBiase, at this point, we know that Ted DiBiase is on his way out. He's headed to WCW soon. He was not active at all in this match. He was just like, what the hell are you doing there? Not even pounding on the mat.
He's might as well
not even trying to right. He's just standing there. Like like you said, like a cameraman. And doing jack. Which is going to change in the next couple of matches, but at this match, he's not doing anything at all. So this match ends up being a double count out, and it's kind of building up to their WrestleMania match that they're going to have. Ken, I said earlier that he had a match with Aldo Montoya. JV, what do you know about Aldo Montoya?
It's the Portuguese Man of War.
The Portuguese Man of War.
Yeah.
And he also, as we said last week, we talked about PAL, Police Athletic League, Fall River, Massachusetts. He also wrestled there often for Yankee Pro Wrestling as PJ Walker, which I go back and I look at his page now. He's Justin Incredible, he's known as now, from his days in ECW. It doesn't mention PJ Walker at all. They only mention PJ Polanco, which I think is his real name, Polanco. But no PJ Walker. You remember the name as being PJ Walker, right?
I do, yes. That's weird that it's not. He doesn't have that on his site.
Yeah.
On
so
his
he's
site,
PJ
it was
Walker.
like a wiki page.
No, it's a Wikipedia.
Page. Hey, add it in.
Yeah,
That'd be your contribution to Wikipedia.
I remember you as PJ Walker. Don't try to hide it.
I don't even know how that works. I've never had to tried to edit anything on Wiki.
So during his match with Aldo Montoya, he had a opening segment where Steve Austin mentions Stone Cold for the very first time. We're going to play that clip right now.
$1 million dream. That's a nice way of putting it. I look at it as cutting the flow of blood to a man's brain. I'm sure you think that's cold. It is stone cold.
Okay, so that's the first time he says Stone Cold. It's not very long, very quick. And this brings us now to WrestleMania 12, where he now has his follow-up match with Savio Vega. This is March 21st, 1996. The timestamp for WrestleMania 12, if you're watching on the network, is 26 minutes, 8 seconds, and it lasts about 13 minutes to the 39:02 marker. Okay, so Steve Austin is coming out to the ring. He still wears the $1 Million Championship. He still has Ted DiBiase. And we get a little recap of a match that happened earlier, about 2 weeks before, on Superstars, where he tagged teams with Savio Vega. When the heck does anything go right when you have a heel and a babyface teaming together? it's just so typical.
The heel you just had a match with.
Right. Just had a match with them. Now you're teaming up together. So, of course, it's going to lead to conflict. So, they were going against the Body Donnas. And that was Skip and Zip, Chris Candido, and Tom Pritchard. So, they build that up. They talk about that. Doc Hendricks has an interview with Savio Vega to get things going on, get it pumped up. And then it just starts out as a big-ass brawl. And we have Tim White as the referee, I like to point out, because we'll talk about him in a little bit. So, the brawl goes on. They're building up over the last 3 weeks. Everything's going nice and strong. But, all of a sudden, everything stops. Footage goes to something else. JV, want to jump in on that?
The Piper and Goldust chase, because that match had started, if I'm not mistaken, right before this Stone Cold and Savio Vega match. And as you recall, that was, I know for me, that was a game-changing match. The Goldust and Roddy Piper match. That was just completely insane. And Mike, I don't know about how you feel about it, but imagine something like that happening today. Just, the Goldust character and Piper attacking that character and all that, and what he stood for is kind of funny.
All right. Yeah, we all know the whole thing was basically gay bashing.
Yeah,
is what was going on at that point. And Piper calls in and says, "Oh, I'm chasing this fruitcake around."
Yeah. He says, "I'll chase him. I'll chase him all the way to Tijuana." I think it's something of that nature about chasing him to Tijuana. Which, in hindsight, you hear Tijuana, you're younger or whatever. You're like, "Oh, Tijuana must be right there." I'm like, "Hey, where the hell is this event?"
Or you're thinking, "Oh, it's so far away." Like, meaning that, I'm going to chase him to, Kingdom Come, so far away.
But as an adult now, I'm thinking, he really can't chase him for, hours and hours. It's got to be relatively close. I didn't know the difference between Anaheim and Tijuana, but actually it's only 2 hours. So, in theory,
so it was actually legitimate.
All the way. Yeah,
yeah, he could have actually went to Tijuana.
With the OJ footage.
Yeah, right. That's another thing. They just took OJ footage, which typical for wrestling at the time. Just take something that's what already happened.
That's what made it even better. It really did.
In hindsight, it's so silly.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could talk. We could talk more about that, but that's not what the show's about.
Mm-hmm.
So the referee, like I said earlier, was Tim White. He takes a big bump. He takes Savio Vega's spinning sidekick. Sidekick that he usually uses 3 times in a match, it seems like. What's the name of that move?
The spinning heel kick.
Yeah, the spinning heel kick or sidekick.
I forget what he called it. I think that was the Caribbean Sensation. Is that what he called it?
The Caribbean Sensation.
Yeah,
he overused that. He even used it as
when he's in the corner, right, and he comes up and he does the spinning heel kick, and then he kind of does a fancy flip over the rope after he hits it.
Sometimes, yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it'll be on the ropes.
Yeah.
But usually it's in the center of the ring where he just goes off one side of the ring and then does the spinning heel kick.
But his finisher was like a super kick type deal, wasn't it? I thought I watched one of his older matches and it was like a super kick. Or maybe that was as Quang. I don't remember.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
He was a martial arts expert, so
yeah, he's a martial arts expert, so he knows what he's doing.
Those kicks meant something, and he became Savio Vega. He was actually, I think they mentioned in the Raw match actually that he's a street fighter, or he's a master of street fighting or something crazy. I'm like, oh, that's funny, because he's just the master of martial arts.
He's the master of everything. So he hits Tim White with this kick, and Tim White goes out. Now, I have a theory about this.
Put your tinfoil hats on. Get ready.
Yeah, no shit. I think Tim White was actually injured. There's nothing to confirm it. I have no idea. Maybe I'm just being worked big time. I'm a mark and believe it and whatever. But it does seem just weird that the match goes in this direction. A match with Stone Cold, Savio Vega is going to end up in this just strange finish. The kick, if you go back and you watch the kick, totally looks like Tim White took the brunt of that, and he was just knocked out, and they were just trying to figure out what to do. So Ted DiBiase steps in to try to buy some time. He gives Austin the belt, and then he hits Vega with it, and then Austin puts on a sleeper, not the $1 Million Dream. He just puts him in the regular just sleeper hold. It's kind of like a rest hold, just to kind of buy time. And Tim White is out. So Ted DiBiase takes soda from probably the announcer booth. I don't see exactly where he took it. But he has soda and he just pours it on Tim White, wakes him up, and Tim White looks like he doesn't know what the hell's going on. And McMahon is already saying, we need to get somebody down here. And again, I could be totally marking out and being worked. But again, it just doesn't make sense for this to happen in this match. So Tim White looks like he's hurting. More officials come down They're checking on him. So there's like all this big hoopla going on for this match. Steve Austin versus Savio Vega. Having all these referees come down and check on Tim White. And Tim White finally comes and he does the 3 count and awards the match to Austin. So Austin defeats Vega. It's kind of a shitty start to Austin's Mania career. Okay, we know things are going to get a lot better going on from there. But what a lousy finish to a match that could have been great, but I really think the match ended in the way it did because Tim White was actually hurt.
And you know what? I believe you, Scully. I really do. You know, when I was listening to you, when
well, I'd be more like Mulder. Mulder is more likely to have the conspiracy. Scully's like, no, you're bullshitting.
But so when you told me that, and then I went back and I watched it all, and you know, at first when you were telling me, I'm thinking like, it's probably because they were doing that. In the meantime, they were covering the Roddy Piper and Goldust match. Like, just gave them like a reason to kind of cut away, you know. But when you go back and watch it, they're not. They're actually trying to still cover the match. So they didn't switch back to like see what was going on, get an update rather on the Goldust and Roddy Piper match that was still, I guess, going on or whatever that you want to call it. So I agree. I'm a believer.
All right. And this is the first place you're going to hear that because it's nowhere else. Unless you thought of it on your own, it's not out there because I looked because there had to be some kind of story about, you know, was Tim White injured and was there some mishap with this Austin Vega match? And there's nothing out there. There's probably nothing out there because nobody gives a shit about this match. But since we're doing the show and we're breaking down his career, this is something that stands out as kind of fishy. So, you heard it here first on the Bottom Line Cast. So, put it out there. Alright, so, as that match is going on, as it's finishing up, Vince McMahon is still saying, I can't get over how lousy this officiating is here. You know, it'd be fine if we got more officials down here. So, he's getting everybody down there. And, you know, you just have this big mess. So, who knows? Like I said, it could be work. Whatever the hell. Anyways, the match doesn't go over well as being a great match, but there's a great match to come. And most people aren't going to see it. And that's In Your House, Beware of Dog. But before we get to that, I just want to run down some of the matches that Steve Austin has prior to Beware of Dog in Your House throughout that month after WrestleMania. So I'm just going to list JV. You can comment if you like. Here's his opponents. April 1st, he defeats Bart Gunn. April 2nd, he has another match with Savio Vega, but this time, Savio Vega is the Caribbean Kid, and he's wearing a mask, like Quang.
Oh, all right.
And
I know
he beats Steve Austin, and then he takes his mask off. And it's like, he got beat by Savio Vega. So that's leading up to this In Your House match. So the feud's still going on at that point. And then April 29th, he has a match against Scott Taylor again. Scotty Too Hottie. Then he has a match against Mark Merrill the same day, which is a taped Raw.
Mark Merrill.
Then he has on April 30th another match against Matt Hardy. Defeats him for Superstars 501. April 30th, another Superstars recording 503 against Fatu. MSG House Show on May 19th. He goes against Jake Roberts. And then that brings us to this In Your House. Beware of Dog. And this was a debacle, as I like to put. Because the power went out. So this is in South Carolina. This is the first and only pay-per-view to ever take place in South Carolina. And there's also going to be something else, the first and only time about In Your House, Beware of Dog. And that is that it's the only pay-per-view to be broken up into 2 different days. So there's a part 1 and a part 2. Because the power went out, only a couple matches aired on Sunday, which was May 26, 1996. and then it would be followed up on May 28th. It would finish it up. If you remember how pay-per-views work, JV, do you remember how pay-per-views work when they do the encore?
The replay?
Yeah.
You'd have to buy it again, no?
Well, yeah, you would have to buy it again, but they would play the pay-per-view again for those that missed it on Sunday, because there was no DVR back then, so you couldn't get something record it. So if you wanted to watch it, they would air it again on a Tuesday. So every pay-per-view on Tuesday, they would play it again. You have to pay, obviously, but that was the encore presentation of it. So instead of having an encore presentation, they were going to do a live show to make up for the mishap that they had on the Sunday night. So that is why they had two parts. So part one is on Sunday. It's only a couple matches. And then they had the encore, which played the two matches from Sunday again, plus 3 live matches. Big shit show, basically. So the thing with Austin and Vega, during their match, they had a strap match, Caribbean strap match. And when their match started, lights went out. And then they just continued to fight. And apparently they had one of the greatest matches. And according to Bruce Pritchard, on his podcast, he talked about how he was just all in a panic because he was running production on the show. And he's flipping out, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he goes down to Vince McMahon, who's sitting ringside because he does commentary. And Vince McMahon's just drinking coffee, like, not panicked at all. And he tells Bruce, this is one hell of a match. And Bruce is like, what the hell? What are you talking about? What, like, we're in a panic right now. And you
major
just
production issues right now.
yeah. You say this is a great match. So, the point being that it was a good match. So, regardless of what was going on, Vega and Austin was still just going to give the audience a good match, regardless if it was on TV or not. So, that's just a cool story. Cool to hear. And this also may have been the match where Vince McMahon kind of felt like Austin is the real deal. We're going to push the hell out of him. And it may lead to him winning the King of the Ring. The curtain call had just happened days before, where Diesel and Razor Ramon, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, with Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Shawn Michaels raised hands when they were babyfaces and heels together, which was a big no-no at the time. And that caused a lot of friction. So Triple H ended up getting the brunt of the punishment there, and he was supposed to, who knows, in reality, but people say that he was supposed to win the King of the Ring. And this may have been the point where it's like, all right, well, if it's not going to be Triple H, it's going to be Austin, because he's having a hell of a match here. So this may have been the time where Austin comes to rise here. Yeah, so anyways, they have a great match there. And then they're going to have another match in 2 days. As I said, this is the first and only pay-per-view in South Carolina. They would never go back because of this shit show that happens there. The following night is Raw 161 on May 27, 1996. Which stands out because that is also the day that, I believe this is correct, that Scott Hall shows up on Nitro. Which is groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was. I remember that. I mean, any wrestling fan that was watching wrestling at that time remembers that. That was crazy.
So while we have this going on, that's happening over there. Mm-hmm. That's not for this show, but just wanted to point it out. But on Raw that night, a stipulation is made for the rematch for In Your House 2, Beware of Dog Part 2. And it was, if Stone Cold loses, $1 Million Man is out of WWF. And if Savio Vega loses, he becomes $1 Million Man's limo driver.
He gets to be Virgil.
Yeah. So ultimately, we know what's happening. And that's Teddy is going bye-bye. But how's it going to happen? Yep. So, we have In Your House, Beware of Dog Part 2. May 28th, 1996. Timestamp on the network, 51 minutes, 54 seconds. and it goes until 1 hour, 18 minutes, 25 seconds. A lengthy match there. Now you have different commentary team. You have Jim Ross and Mr. Perfect instead of Jerry Lawler and Vince McMahon. And we got Tim White as the official again. I have that in my notes because I just feel like Tim White is always the official in Stone Cold matches. And I'm going to bring it up every single time that I see Tim White in a Steve Austin match. Because they get comfortable with working with certain people. So that probably has a lot to do with it. All right, so this is a Caribbean strap match. JV, you watched this earlier today, right?
Yes, I did. Did you?
What were your initial thoughts? So I watched it yesterday.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was a great match. And JR on commentary definitely helped a lot because, you kind of get, over the years we're going to get used to JR just, commentating for Stone Cold and hyping him up and all that. So this match, he really does a lot of that because it's hard hitting. I mean, they've got a superplex off the top rope, I believe, with the strap.
Yeah. Excellent move.
Which is crazy. And it was just hard hitting. And you can see the welts on Stone Cold's back throughout the match. And, they're continuously promoting the fact that Savio Vega has never lost a strap match. And, so.
A Caribbean strap match.
A Caribbean strap match, yeah. Emphasis on the Caribbean.
We don't even know if he ever had one before because it wasn't in WWF.
And then some of the moves he's pulling off and tricks with the strap, they're sure to point that out. It's because, he's a seasoned vet in strap matches, so he knows all the tricks. And it's kind of funny how differently he uses the strap compared to Stone Cold.
One thing that I thought was funny in the match is that you have Tim White. He's the referee, but the rules in this match is no countouts, no DQ.
No.
So you have a referee telling Austin to break a chokehold, and he's counting to 10. Who gives a shit? What? Why are you counting to 10?
Yeah.
There's no DQ, dumbass.
It's like strangling him in the strap at some points.
So some of that stuff that annoys me when they don't even know the rules.
Yeah.
Themselves.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to break a hold because it's no DQ.
And when I'm watching that with someone that doesn't watch wrestling, and you're trying to explain that to them, you feel like an idiot. They're like, oh, well, there's no disqualification, but the ref's just doing his job. Yeah.
Well, the ref's just being a good Samaritan. He's trying to.
He's just looking out for the good guy.
Yep. He doesn't want you to choke him, so you gotta listen to him. Yeah. Don't choke him. How about if it's
really
no
can't
DQ?
Do anything, but he's like a security guard. He can't really do anything, but
yeah.
He's there to keep the peace.
If it's no count out, no DQ, the only thing he needs to do is just count the 4 corner slaps.
That's it.
That's it. That's all he has to do.
And it's his determination, at his discretion, when he thinks the count from each corner has stopped and it needs to be reset. That's
right.
It.
That's your only job. Your only job. Don't worry about choking. Don't worry about punching too much. So that was one thing. And what was great about it was Jim Ross called Tim White out on it too. And he brought up the fact that this is no DQ. This is no DQ.
I could do your job.
Now, as I said earlier, when they set this matchup on Raw the previous night, that Ted DiBiase was going to be out if he lost. If Steve Austin lost. So Ted DiBiase really does a good job kind of selling the importance of this match. And that this could be the end of his career in WWF. Because, they know it is. So it's kind of like the send-off of Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, it's the most emotion you see out of the guy.
Yeah, because,
the whole time.
Like we said earlier, he wasn't giving a shit at ringside about any of the matches. But in this match, he gave a shit. Because this was his last hurrah. This was the end of his run. And his run at this point was 9 years. 9 years in the WWF. Which, in comparison to that era, Hogan was in WWF for 9 years. Randy Savage was in WWF for 8 years. So that is a lengthy reign, a run, for any superstar at that point.
Yep.
And today it seems like nothing because you have numerous modern stars that have been around for years. Like Randy Orton, for instance, been around for over a decade. John Cena, over a decade. Almost everybody.
Yep.
Everybody's just there, they're hired, they work there forever. They use when they use them. But back then, back in the 90s, very rare for runs to last that long. Runs usually last like 2-3 years, not even. That was it. So Ted DiBiase had been around for a long time, and this was his send-off. So he was selling. He was moving around the ring, and it was, like I said, his last hurrah. So he puts up a good performance.
He needed to sell there because he wasn't selling tickets. So.
Yeah, right. So a couple of things that I like to point out about the match is Ted DiBiase, like I was saying, he got into the camera when Steve Austin was working on Vega, and he says, "You own him now. You own him now," which I just thought was a great line because he's the $1 Million Man. You own him.
Did you catch?
Buys everybody.
Did you catch?
Everybody's got a price.
That the commentators mentioned that he's kind of throwing the match for Stone Cold. Like maybe his advice is like almost like he's giving Stone Cold bad advice, not intentionally, but
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty sure it's JR that mentions it in this match.
Oh.
It's this match or one of the other matches, but they kind of plant the seed that they're going to get Austin. Like DiBiase might not be good for Austin. They mention it in one of those matches. It's either that or the match before that.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Right, so the match ends. I think it was creative. I mean, what I read about it, because I read some reviews of the match, and what was written oftentimes about it was that it's a typical finish for a strap match. Which I guess I haven't seen a lot of strap matches because I thought this was pretty creative in that Austin he tags the corners, but at the same time, Savio is tagging the corners behind him. So they both get the 3 tags, and then they battle over the 4th. Which I also put into question, though, because that's a break. That's part of the rules, is that if there's any break in the tag, then the previous tags at the corner don't count. But they just kind of forego that, and they're fighting over the 4th corner, but it really shouldn't be allowed. But anyway, that's wrestling. They change the rules whenever they want anyway. So it ends up being a fight over the last corner, and Savio gets flipped or pulled into the corner and wins the match. He falls into the corner.
Stone Cold basically flips him with the strap into the corner.
Into the 4th corner, yeah. Which I thought was great. I thought it was great.
It was executed well.
Yeah. I enjoyed the match. Thought it was a solid match. Definitely better than the WrestleMania 12 match. Obviously better than it's their best match. I'd put it up there as, I don't know, if we were ranking matches, which, maybe we should do.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't obviously we know it wasn't the best match on that card, but in hindsight, it had to be.
Well, maybe it was. I don't know.
Well, that was the Iron Man match, that WrestleMania.
WrestleMania, but this in your house.
Oh, that's right. We're in your house now. Yep. Oops.
Yeah, it could have been the best match of that.
Yeah, on that card.
Night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if I was saying how many skulls this match earned.
Well, the main event for that, now I remember, was
Bulldust
against Undertaker.
Well, that ended up being the last match, but the main event was supposed to be Shawn Michaels versus British Bulldog.
And that aired, all right, but on the network that airs prior to
that. Because that's from the Sunday.
Yep.
And then the other matches aired after.
Bulldog's wife with the Princess Diana look.
Yeah.
Speak to the times.
Because she's British. Well, she's Canadian, but she has a British husband.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the match ends. Stone Cold loses his manager. $1 Million Man. Can't even talk. $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase is out of the WWF, and he gets the send off. Na 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 na. I'm not gonna say the rest. It's annoying, but that's what happens, and that's the end of the $1 Million Man. So Austin is now free, on his own, to finally become who he is. Now we'll lead us to next week, which is going to be one of the major highlights of the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's the origin of Austin 316, King of the Ring, 1996. So next week we'll get to that. If you want to add anything?
No, I'm looking forward to that, though. As many times as you relive that, it always feels as good. Always feels as good as the first time.
So, looking forward to next week. There's one other thing that I did want to mention, I failed to mention with the Savio Vega match, is that I was thinking back, I was like, watching now, wow, I realized that match was good. The Savio Vega character, kind of lame in my opinion. Obviously, I couldn't relate to it, but looking back now, I was like, wow, he's a solid wrestler. And my dumbass 13-year-old self had no idea what was good wrestling at the time.
I had a friend in middle school at the time, and pretty sure it was middle school. His name was like Billy Rosario or something, and he liked Savio Vega and what's his name, the Spanish guy from WCW. I don't know if he was Spanish, but Conan.
Conan.
Yeah. Was he
He's
Puerto
Mexican.
Rican? He was Mexican.
Mexican.
Oh, but I don't know. But he liked Savio Vega and he liked Conan, and I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Rosario.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had no real knowledge back then.
Yeah.
I probably don't have any knowledge now either, but hey. So, closing words, JV?
Goodbye, Savio Vega. Goodbye, $1 Million
Yeah.
Man.
It was nice to squeeze you into 2 episodes. This was supposed to be episode 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't let the door hit you on the way out, but
yeah,
we're on to
Savio
bigger
Vega,
and better
you're
things
out.
the rest of the way.
right. Next week, we're on to the King of the Ring.
The good
Which
stuff.
brings us Mark Merrow
Mark
and Jake
Merrow.
the Snake Roberts.
Lionel
Well,
was a little
ultimately-
Richie with boxing gloves.
Yeah. But ultimately brings us to the promo, which is going to be awesome to talk about.
Yep.
All right, so thanks guys for listening. JV, where can you be caught on Twitter?
On Twitter, I am at John Van Damage. On Instagram, you can also catch me at John_Van_Damage.
And you can get me on Twitter at MPRU83. And you can get the show if you want to give us feedback, which we would love, at BottomLineCast on Twitter. Keep listening. See you next week. King of the Ring, 1996. So long, guys.